What's up, guys? Welcome to Podcast 412, Fight for Purity. A bold way of looking at challenges that young people are facing. We'll talk about the naked truth of life and how to handle the problems you're thinking but not talking about. So strap in, get ready for another great podcast.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Podcast 412. We're going to continue talking about fathers or the lack thereof and the passages that we had spoke about last time. And Elisa is going to start us off with a fun fact.
Yes. For our fun fact, I'm just going to read it. It says, a recent study in the biology letters suggests that men have an enhanced ability to judge someone's size by the sound of their voice. So they're more likely to be correct in judging, I guess, how big and maybe even what they look like and everything just by the sound of their voice.
Which is so weird.
Yeah.
That's, I don't know.
Better than us.
But yeah.
I know Angelique was saying that but it's people that we know where they're walking.
Yeah, you can tell by their footsteps. That's different, though.
Yeah.
I'm like,
I feel like they can size up the...
Yeah, what kind of person, I guess, is talking.
Yeah.
Which is weird.
I was thinking a bit more like it's like a risk assessment kind of thing. Like they know
if there's a big person.
How, there's a big person coming my way. Yeah. Like so they can like be ready to...
That makes sense.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, like kind of when I heard that.
I like to imagine what a person, like if I were like just looking at them, like in their, like a photo or something, and like never hearing their voice, I like to imagine what they sound like. And then once they do speak, I'm like, oh.
Yeah. I have ever thought about it.
That's true. I wonder like if guys with like deep voice are like bigger. I don't know.
We'd have to ask a guy.
I'm just curious. We'll have all the guys talk and say, like.
Have you ever seen those country singers and they're like these petite little guys and they have like these big monsters, deep voices?
Yeah. So I wonder if that's like an indicator of like, probably, I don't know. I've known some guys that don't have, they have like a
Mickey Mouse voice.
Kind of, yeah.
I did know, I didn't know him, but we had this guy who would come to our work to drop off our stuff or whatever, and he was a bigger guy, but he literally had a Mickey Mouse voice. Oh, really? I felt really bad. I was like, oh, this poor guy got made fun of a lot. I felt really bad because, like, he's a bigger guy. He's like Andrew, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
And then he was like, here, I need you to sign this. And I was like...
You got the short end of the stick, sir.
Can you imagine somebody coming up behind you with that voice and you turn around and it's you're like,
they're all trying to rob you and you're like, try somebody else.
They wouldn't be very intimidating, huh? That's funny. Okay, so we're going to try to finish up our topic. I mean, like I said last week, I think we could go on like probably for weeks on fathers, because we're talking about that Storge love, that first love, that family love. And so we're going to talk about dads, we're going to talk about moms, and then we're going to talk about siblings, because that's all in that Storge love. So, it's all very, different. But last week we talked about like rites of passage that different cultures have. And I mentioned how America has our rites of passage, which is, seems mediocre compared to...
Well, that there's no set rite of passage in our culture.
Yeah. And so we talked about, like, I know the one that I read talked about how they put those ants to sleep, and then you put the glove on and everything. And then hers was they get taken away for 10 years. And the men kind of teach him different skills, and then I think Angelique's was the one with...
Are they jumping off the poles?
With their vines
attached.
Attached to
their
jumping. And I think from our perspective, it can, especially like now, where you can think that's so cruel, that's inhumane, that's terrible, and because they did it with kids as young as 10. And I think the oldest ones were like 20
something,
early 20s, yeah. But I think most of them, it was really between 10 and like 15 where they, like to them, you started from there. From this point on, you're no longer a child per se. Yeah. You're going to go into manhood. Can you imagine? Like I said, middle school. Like I would say middle school is probably, except for the 10-year-old, fifth grade. Yeah, fifth grade. That's probably the youngest one I think that I saw. So, but yeah. But one of the things, like, to get, I think, a better perspective, kind of like, why do you guys think they had to do that? Like, what do you think they were trying to teach them by going through all these different, like, pain or isolation or just the different things that they had to do? Why do you guys think that they felt it was necessary to make them go through these rituals or these rites of passage?
Well, I think for a lot of those other cultures, it was because you needed to have skills just to survive in that particular culture. Because, like, we're very urbanized, using my fancy words. We got like cities, we've got like the cars and everything, like a lot of technology, versus a lot of the other cultures, it's there, but it's not like the main focus. Yeah, they still like do a lot of stuff like with their hands, a lot of manual labor. Yeah. I think a lot of that is like for discipline. I think in a very basic way, like you got to learn how to discipline your body, because you got to be disciplined to learn a skill, any kind of skill. Even like here in the city, you have to like take the time to learn something and figure it out, mentally or physically. And I think that's a big part of it. I think is just teaching them like you need to discipline your mind and your body, especially when it comes to pain. Like, because I think too, it's like in my brain, it's like a warrior thing. Like you got to be able to handle pain so that you can continue to move past it. Handle it, move past it, but even still be able to function with pain, because you think like you got to be able to protect if you have a family, if you have children, you can't
fall apart.
You can't fall apart. So I think that's like the basic level, like discipline your body, discipline your mind to be able to make it past these things.
To me that sounds like really just maturing as a human being. Like part of maturing is realizing that you have responsibilities. It's not all about you. And I think the reason why they had rite of passage, because if it's up to us, we'll stay kids. We'll stay immature for as long as we can. The less responsibility we have, the better. And I think either it comes to a point where I think as a culture they had to, like, they knew that, and that's just human nature for whether you're a man or a woman, to just not want to grow up and not want the responsibility and not want to have to face the consequences of your actions, and so they had to make I guess an agreement. Okay, at this age, it's time to grow up. It's time that you have responsibilities, and these are the skills to help you with those responsibilities. And I don't think they did it out of because we hate you and life sucks.
Well, because
and
they want to prepare them.
I think
it was out of. Well, I think it's out of that love that Storge.
Yeah, because they're gonna pass on.
Yeah, and like if they don't have those skills, like they're not gonna thrive. Like they'll die. Like they're not gonna be able to survive. And I think it even just builds like character in someone. Because
Well, and even in our society, if you look at like a lot of the kids growing up now with the technology and everything that's so easy,
accessible.
Yeah, accessible. Like they can't even handle their own emotions. So can you imagine putting a kid like one of our kids and having them have one at sting them? You know what I mean? Like they flip out. But if you think about the age range too, because it goes to 10. But what's the average age? I guess we could look that up. The average age that someone lives up to, because even when you're 30, people are dying at 60. I've known like my great grandparents died in their 50s, so like their midlife was 25, 26. And if like in our culture, guys aren't growing up until like their late 30s, or even later. It's like their whole life, like it's just they're finally growing up in their 30s or 40s, and I think in those cultures too, the dangers that they have to protect their families, the women aren't as strong physically and stuff, and they just have to.
I think they just have to grow up faster. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing either, because like I know like as a kid it's easier for you to learn new stuff than it is when you're older, because like your brain's already set in its ways by the time you're like in your 20s. Because I think we talked about that. Your
like when you're 25.
I think when you're 25, like your brain is set. It's like I know these things. I'm fully grown.
Yeah.
But before that, you have all of this time to rearrange and rethink and learn and like figure things out in your brain. It's a lot easier for you. That's why they say, I think, like if you're going to teach your kids more than one language, it should be like before they're 5,
Yeah.
because their brain's just going to soak it in.
Yeah.
And like, so I think that's why they start younger, so that they're old enough to be able to handle learning so much new stuff.
And I think even able to take the risk and not be as afraid, because when you're young, you're not as scared of stuff. Not that you're not scared, but there's stuff
no
that you
sense of
just
fear.
like yeah.
Yeah, or if there is, it's like easy to push aside.
Yeah, and it's like that whole like survival thing, and even I think just the fact that they know as kids, when I get to this age, this is gonna be expected of me. Like they understand that about their culture, and I think even like you were saying how the people that are teaching them, and most of I'm pretty sure almost in all of them, it was the older men from the tribe or the village or whatever it was. They're the ones that were teaching them, and they're teaching them because they know what it's like. I feel I like, especially with the one with the ants. I mean, if they have those bullet ants, it must be because they live among all these bullet ants, and so they probably had to go out and either hunt or whatever, sleep or whatever it is that they have to do to survive. They've probably been bitten by these ants, and so they know, like you said, I gotta be able to endure this to survive, and if I can't endure this, then I need to but it's taught by the other men. I think that's what's like interesting, and just the fact that they know that when I get to this age, I'm gonna have to go through. I feel like in our culture, I don't think boys don't even know when
even
they're
think
supposed to
about-
grow up.
When
Well, yeah.
I think the official age is 18.
Yeah, and it's kind of sad that at 18, then you start thinking, well, but it's like it's not instilled into them. Like I'm supposed to be like maturing and growing, and I mean, our kids would never survive. Like if we send our kids into that culture, they never survive. Yeah. So they would never make it. I mean, especially the one where she said for 10 years, where you have to go in with the elders and they teach you all the stuff all the skill sets that you need to survive in that culture.
You literally grow up with other men.
Yeah. And that's it. No influence from women. Yeah.
From the soft side.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, because as like a mom, you look at like, oh my gosh, like even the stairs here, right? We're like, oh my gosh, and they're just like, let's see what happens. The guys are like, let's see what happens. And then even like with my husband, he was talking to our oldest, and he's like, he's like, next year we're gonna be working, doing stuff. He's like, it's time for you to grow up now. So he's like, you need to start learning some skills and stuff. But his dad did that to him.
Yeah.
And it wasn't, I mean, it's not as extreme as these other cultures, but even just life skills of what we need to learn here.
Yeah.
And he's like, if you have the money to pay a mechanic, great. But if you don't, like, you need to know how to even do just the simple tasks, and a lot of guys don't know that, like how to change a tire or how to do anything.
Yep. I think when they had the boot camp, that's what my husband said. You had kids there that had never ever done a push-up. They didn't know. And you're talking about kids that are at least, I think, what's the age now? 12, 13? 13 to 18. They have a boot camp for the young teenagers. And they have boys that did not know how to do, or had never done a push-up and didn't know how to do a push-up, or even sit-ups. There's no like physical ability or, because they don't.
Because it's not taught.
Yeah.
It's like we said, like the culture is so, like we said, it's so easy. We're spoiled here.
Yeah.
So I think we lost that as a culture here in the U.S. Like we lost that rite of passage and that masculinity.
Yeah.
I guess.
It's crazy because like I just like remember in like middle school, just being in middle school, and like we had to go through like, I guess like fitness tests. So like we would have to like hold on to the bars. The guys would have to like do pull-ups. I like all of that, even in like freshman year for PE. We had to like work out before we even did anything, and like now that's like
It's an elective now. To do,
there.
like ROTC or leadership.
Really?
It's
PE's an elective now?
No, they have some, but like PE classes, but like
They're
the
not
hardcore.
as-
Yeah. So like the boys, I don't know if they had PE, but I know that they have an elective, and it's like the only class that like, because the guy's military.
Oh, like where he
And-
actually pushes you?
Yeah, so they call it leadership now, not ROTC, at least at that school.
Yeah.
And so they, like when the boys are telling me what they expect of him, I'm like, gosh, like that's even like the bare minimum, but it sounds like so harsh, like to them. Yeah, I'm like, I like that teacher, because it's like teaching them, he's like, you are responsible for your own actions, and you know, it's like you're responsible for yourself, and even just the physical part of it, you know. And I was wondering how they would like it, because you know, they don't like when we tell them like you should go outside and play, you know. but they like it once they get into it, and the competitiveness, because I think it's still in boys, but it's not. I mean, you have to bring stuff out, I think, sometimes in like the younger kids.
Well, I was like reading, like, well, not reading, I saw this like video where it's like where, like, I guess kids, like starting from like, well, boys, they're, since like they have all that like energy, I guess, like that they're being misdiagnosed with ADHD because they're in a setting where they don't thrive. Like they need to be like physically active to like even be able to learn.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking that probably the closest thing that we have to something like that is the military. What was kind of cool, we went to a memorial, not a service. It was a parade, celebrate, whatever you call it. But a memorial, we went to a Memorial Day thing, because I like them, like I appreciate the military people that have been. And so it was cool is they're playing like all these military songs that they do, like the bands in the military, but the lady was going through all the different things that how it came about, like why they play this song, where it came from. And one of the ones I think I kind of vaguely remember what she was saying. There's a part I think it was the Navy. Was it the Navy? I think it was the Navy, but where the military men were they were fighting, but there was 4 I think chaplains that end up actually like locking arms together and jumped into the water, I think, to save the other soldiers, you know. But just different stories, and it was cool to see all these. They're older men, they're probably in their 60s and their 70s. They're there like just as part of the whole thing, like guys from the Navy, guys from the Army, guys from the Marines, because you think, because they have to go through like their whole basic training, you know, and they've got to like walk with backpacks, and they've got to climb walls and run, and they like deprive them of sleep and all these different things that they have to go through. But I know one of the first things that you have to understand when you go is that who's the authority. Like they have to break down your will, and you have to understand that if you're going to move anywhere at all, you have to establish who the authority is first.
And it's not you.
yeah, that it's not you, that you have to do what your commander says. You have to do whatever he tells you. If he tells you to get up, if he tells you to go to sleep, if he tells you to do, you know, put your uniform on, whatever it is, you know, hike this long,
How to
or
make your bed,
run,
how to
or
do-
whatever, you have to understand that there's a man there that's, you have to do everything, because they're trying to train you to be a soldier.
Yeah.
The whole point of it is to teach you that.
Yeah. Well, I think that's what's lost. Like you said, you know, the whole fatherlessness,
Yeah.
that's been lost. So kids don't know anymore how to submit to authority or realize that they aren't the authority in every setting. You know, like sometimes you got to figure out when to kind of just be like, okay, I'm not in charge. You know, and that's hard, even as like a girl. You know, it's hard to do, to realize that you have to submit and you have to listen to somebody else, whether you agree or not. Sometimes, like, it doesn't matter necessarily.
Sometimes it's a matter of life or death.
Yeah.
Right? You're telling your kid not to go out into the street. If you do that again, here's your consequence. But it's not because you hate your kid. It's because there's cars, like, they don't know the dangers coming in and out, you know. And then the military, they don't know the dangers they're going into. They've never been in battlefield before. They don't know what's coming.
It's like one of those things, if he tells you to duck, it's not just cuz.
Yeah.
You know,
Like, why should I duck?
Yeah.
And you can't be asking that. You know, like,
is no why.
like,
He
why
says
do I
duck,
have
you
to-
duck.
They say you do. Like,
Yeah, and it's like you said, they don't know why they're doing it either. They just know, hey, you got to walk with this, however 20 pound, or I don't know how many pounds it is, but 60-pound backpack, full of their gear. You have to walk with it, but like, why? But you can't ask why. Why do I have to do this? Why do I, you have to obey the commands.
And you lose that without a father. Like you don't learn how to do that. You don't learn how to discipline yourself, I guess, because there was never an authority to discipline you in the first place to help you set those boundaries.
Like you guys said, and then you don't know how to receive correction. You don't know how to let somebody tell you what to do because you don't know what you're doing. That's why they're telling you what to do, because you don't know. And I know that we work with people like that come out of prison sometimes, and they have a hard time because you tell them, it's like, no, they have this mentality, well, you're not helping me, it's your fault. Well, no, it's your fault because you made those decisions. You ended up in prison because you weren't obeying the laws, but they have such a hard time, like, just coming back to, society and taking, like, some direction and being told what to do, even though that's what they're technically being told when they're in prison. When to get up, when to go to bed, when to...
Yeah, and I guess that's, like, understanding what Storge love is that a part of that first basic love is setting those boundaries for you. Like teaching you how to discipline yourself, or giving you discipline because you don't have it yourself. You don't know how to follow boundaries yet. And that's what they're there for. Like the first kind of love is, like, I think, setting those boundaries for you first. And then as you get older and as we move on to the different kinds of love, you figure out your own boundaries and how to move boundaries safely, I guess.
And I think it's like just understanding, I think, for a young man, just understanding you're not going to be like a young man forever. Like there has to be a point in your life where you, because even the scripture says, putting away childish things, there's a point where you got to put away. Like, you got to realize, okay, I'm not a child anymore. I need to start maturing.
And it shouldn't be when you're 30.
So I guess that makes sense. That when, I think it's the one that you shared it was one of you. But we're like how the moms are holding something of the kid's childhood.
That was yours.
And was it mine? It was mine. But anyways, so like when they're holding something of the childhood, and then like once they pass the test or whatever, they throw it away.
Yeah.
Wow.
You're putting away the old.
Yeah, but I think with this, with our culture, there's no line. I think, I don't know if I mentioned it the last time, but I did read a book where it says that a lot of young men actually have a hard time, like, when they get married and start having a family. Yeah, they have a hard time transitioning because they say they've been so used to being immature that when it comes time to mature, they have such a hard time. Like a lot of young, they think it's like, well, I'm going to get married and, have a family. And they think it's going to be like this, I guess, easy, I don't know what they think, but one of the things that they said, they've gotten so used to being immature, basically not having responsibility, not doing whatever they want, whenever they want, how they want, and they're just not ready for it. So
yeah, because with when I had my daughter, I had her at 16, and her mom's excuse was always, well, he's still young. Whatever. And I'm like, I was young and I had to grow up. He has to grow up. But that was her excuse when he was in his late 20s. And I was like, your son is this old now. It's time for him to grow up. He can't live like this. Like, our daughter is a teenager now. Like, so even in society of like a mother, because he has a stepdad, but even having the stepdad, like, it's just I think a mindset too of like that softness of like not having a father, because like his stepdad would tell him stuff all the time, like, dude, you're not gonna like have anybody, you're gonna lose everything because you don't want to grow up, But like the mom, like having that, just like the mother figure, always kind of covering for them too, so then they like don't think they have to grow up, or like I'm missing out on something if I don't if I don't like live my life like this till I'm 50, you
Yeah.
know. And then they want someone when they're all alone at 50 and they don't
Yeah.
know how to have a
Yeah.
relationship.
It's like, what is it? Was it Toys R Us kids?
Yeah.
I don't want to
Grow up,
Yeah,
yeah.
but Toys R Us kid.
Yeah. Yeah, or Peter Pan. You know,
Never growing up.
never growing up.
The
And
Lost Boys.
yeah, that's what we have, I think, in sadly,
Yeah.
you know, so
Because we lost our fathers.
because we lost our fathers and the men that are fathers don't know how to be fathers. So then you have, you know, men that didn't have fathers, are fathers now.
And struggling to figure it
Then
out.
they
Yeah.
don't know, or they're not even
Trying.
trying to be
Yeah.
fathers. So
And they're being like stay-at-home dads
Yeah.
and stuff. Not that like that's always a terrible thing, but
yeah,
taking the role of like a
Yeah.
mother's, you know.
yeah. So if you have a father out there, be grateful.
Yeah, and he teaches you stuff.
And he teaches you things, or he protects you, or he has a job and he works hard every day. You should be very thankful that you have a father, because that really is going to be a big influence in how you turn out, and whether you're a man or you're a woman.
It just determines what kind of relationships you'll have
Yeah.
with authority and with men in the future
Yeah.
for both girls
Yeah.
and guys.
And the kind of father, if you're a son, the kind of father you're going to be, you know, and hopefully you'll be a good father because you had an example. And so there's always hope, though, because we grew up without fathers. So yeah, so we have a father in heaven now. So that makes a big difference. So there is hope. So, but we're probably going to stop on that, and then next week we're going to talk about mothers. We're going to talk about mothers. Thank you guys for joining us, and we'll see you guys next week. Bye. Bye.
Thanks for listening. Join us for our next podcast. You can contact us through Instagram at podcast412 or email us at 412fight@gmail.com. See you next time.